For decades, he lived alone in a quiet London neighborhood, polite, soft-spoken, occasionally seen dragging sacks of rubble from his cellar. No one paid much attention until the ground beneath his home collapsed, and the truth came spilling out. This is the story of William Lyttle, also known as the Mole Man. Chapter 1. The Man in the Coat. William Lyttle didn't make much of a first impression. He was tall, but slouched. His white hair frizzed outward like he'd forgotten to comb it, or didn't care. Always the same long brown coat, no matter the season. It looked like something from another era. He lived alone at 121 Mortimer Road, a brick Victorian terrace in Hackney, East London. Not the kind of house that calls attention to itself. Nothing flashy. Painted iron balcony, overgrown garden, the sort of home that quietly blends into a row of others. Lyttle liked it that way. He was born in Ireland, though the exact year seems to vary depending on the source. His father, he once claimed, was a shipbuilder. William described himself as an engineer. Some neighbors thought he'd worked in construction. Others heard he'd been a mathematician. A few suspected he hadn't worked at all in years. Resigned. The truth was, nobody really knew. Lyttle didn't go out often. He wasn't unfriendly, but he wasn't interested in small talk either. Occasionally, he'd stop and speak with a neighbor over the garden wall. He had an old-world kind of politeness, formal, dry, and slightly distracted. The sort of man who'd forget your name, but offer you tea in a cracked ceramic cup. Some described him as mildly eccentric. Others, more bluntly, called him odd. Bewildered, he collected things. At first, books and newspapers, stacks of them. Later, broken tools, rusted bicycle frames, rolls of wire, anything he thought might be useful someday. His front yard gradually transformed from a garden into a kind of open-air archive. Firmly. But if you asked William, there was nothing unusual about any of it. "I don't like to throw things away," he told a reporter once. "Everything has a purpose, even if you don't see it yet." That seemed to be the theme of his life. He didn't own a car, he had no phone, no visible family. His mail piled up in the hallway, often unopened. But there was something about him that defied pity. He wasn't destitute, he was choosing this. A life of solitude, a house full of objects, and somewhere, buried in it all, a purpose that only he could see. In the evenings, a faint glow would come from his basement window, sometimes the sound of scraping, a shovel, a wheelbarrow being dragged across concrete. But this was London, an old city. The buildings settle, pipes moan. No one asked too many questions. What William Lyttle was actually doing down there wouldn't be discovered for decades. Chapter 2. A Hobby That Grew Teeth. Lyttle would later claim it started innocently enough. He wanted a wine cellar, something simple, practical. Many homes on Mortimer Road had them already. Shallow crawl spaces for storing coal or tinned goods. He just went a little deeper, and then a little further. At some point, the purpose stopped being wine. He never used power tools, only a pickaxe, a shovel, and, according to one account, an old hand trolley he'd modified to carry soil. Bit by bit, over years, he began hollowing out the space beneath his home. He said it helped him think, that digging cleared his mind. And at first, no one noticed. From the street, his house looked unchanged, though a bit more worn. Inside, it had grown darker. Piles of earth lined the hallway. Books leaned precariously against the walls. Neighbors would occasionally hear strange noises at night, metal scraping, metal against stone. the thud of something heavy being dropped. But this was London. People kept to themselves. When asked years later why he kept going, Lyttle was vague. He said he was exploring the medium, or expanding for ventilation. Sometimes he called it urban gardening. He once told a neighbor he was digging just to see how far I could go. But the digging didn't stay confined to the cellar. It began branching out. Tunnels extending under the front yard, the sidewalk, the neighboring lots. No one knew it yet, but Lyttle's house had become the mouth of a sprawling subterranean maze. Some tunnels curved in circles, others dead-ended with no explanation. There were no maps, no designs, only William's memory, what he called his mental blueprint. In time, the structural damage began to show. A crack split one of his interior walls from floor to ceiling. His garden caved in. The front pavement sagged. A delivery van parked nearby once tilted into the roadbed when part of the curb collapsed. Still, Lyttle insisted everything was under control. In 2001, the city finally took notice. Utility workers discovered that a 450-volt cable beneath Mortimer Road had been severed, its insulation rubbed away by something unknown. They suspected subsidence, soil movement, a possible drainage issue. What they didn't suspect, what no one suspected, was that they were standing above a personal excavation site nearly 60 feet wide. Even then, Lyttle denied there was a problem. He said the power company was exaggerating, that the real damage was minimal. He refused inspection, he refused assistance. And then, he kept digging. To the city, William Lyttle was becoming a problem, but to himself he was solving something. Chapter 3: Collapse and Concrete. By 2006, the ground beneath 121 Mortimer Road had become unstable. Neighbors had started complaining more urgently about flickering lights, cracks in their foundations, and a deep, occasional rumbling that seemed to come from nowhere. One morning, a large sinkhole opened up on the public pavement in front of the house. Part of the sidewalk simply vanished, swallowed into a cavity beneath the street. When the council arrived, they expected a burst pipe or some sort of minor infrastructure collapse. Instead, they found tunnels, dozens of them. Some were barely wide enough to crawl through. Others were large enough to stand in, 8 to 10 feet across. They branched out in every direction, like veins. One tunnel stretched nearly 65 feet outward from the house. Another reached a depth of 26 feet. A few ran beneath neighboring properties, threatening to destabilize their foundations. One reportedly ran toward a nearby bus stop. There were multiple levels, some tunnels stacked beneath others, dug without support beams, bracing, or any kind of reinforcement. The soil was loose and dry. In places, it had begun to collapse. City engineers described it as a honeycomb of voids. A freelance structural consultant hired by the council simply said, surprised, "It's a miracle the house is still standing." When confronted, William Lyttle didn't deny it. In fact, he seemed bemused. He told reporters he'd been digging cuckles for fun, and that it was casual, only a wine cellar that got a little out of hand. By then, the damage was beyond casual repair. Hackney Council issued an eviction order. Lyttle was forcibly removed from the property and relocated to a nearby hotel. They declared the house structurally unsound and cordoned off the street. A full excavation and fill-in operation was launched, at taxpayer expense. It took weeks to assess the damage and months to fill the voids. Over 100 cubic meters of concrete were poured into the tunnels. The cost was estimated at £293,000. Lyttle was charged a portion of that total, nearly £100,000, but never paid. Resigned, he claimed poverty. During the cleanup, crews found strange things buried underground. Bicycles, a bathtub, an old television set. electrical wiring rigged into dead ends. Buckets filled with soil, stacked carefully and never moved. There was no pattern to it, no plan, just a maze of earth and discarded objects built by one man with time and a shovel. After the eviction, Lyttle was placed in council housing. The flat he was given was on the upper floor of a tower block. No garden, no basement. Within weeks, he began digging into the floorboards. He died in 2010 at the age of 79. His old house at 121 Mortimer Road sat empty for years, partially restored, partially haunted by its past. Eventually, it was purchased by an artist-architect couple who redesigned it into a modern home with an open central void and concrete support beams that cut straight through the space. They left traces of the past intact. Exposed brickwork, uneven floors, the faint memory of something once hidden beneath. Today, it's a kind of architectural landmark, not formally acknowledged but whispered about. Ask anyone on Mortimer Road and they'll tell you, yes, that's the Mole Man's house. Maybe he wasn't digging to escape the world above, just trying to make sense of it, one tunnel at a time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, and be sure to subscribe for more bizarre stories.